Hi guys, welcome and who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. And in this video, I'm going to show you the complete roster for our beloved Bless You Boys as we enter the Week 3 preseason matchup versus Sean Payton's Denver Broncos in the Caesars Superdome. This may be a dress rehearsal for the starters. We don't have four preseason games anymore. When we had four preseason games, week 3 in the preseason was always a dress rehearsal for every team. But teams treat it differently now. This is the last preseason game. You get a week off next week. So you can either play your starters and still have that bye week before the regular season starts, or you can use this opportunity as it being the last game of the preseason to get your final evaluation on the bottom of your roster because you have to make your cuts to 53 players next week. So, which direction will the Saints take? It seems like we're going to play the starters. Kellen Moore said the veterans were itching to play. They wanted to have some action. They haven't seen much action all year in preseason so far. And we also have a quarterback competition that isn't decided yet. Maybe Kellen Moore wants the starters to play the entire first half. Maybe give Rattler a quarter and Shuck a quarter and see what happens. Maybe that's way too much work in a preseason game for players you want to start for your team. So, that kind of makes me nervous when I think about our offensive line being out there for a whole half in a meaningless game. But look, these guys have been practicing. Rattler's been with the first team in the off season. We just haven't seen Rattler with the complete first team in the preseason. And we haven't seen Shuck with the complete first team either. So, maybe this is the only chance you'll get in preseason action for us to see these guys, a complete unit. It would suck if we played the entire starters and only one quarterback got a chance to play with them. But this, in my past video talking about the quarterback situation, I went through the pros and the cons. There's so many different ways you can look at it. I'm not sure what the Saints are going to do, but I'm ready for it either way. So, what was the big roster move this week that shook the roster down? I'm going to show you the complete roster for the Saints, but first I'm going to talk about the major move that was made with the Saints trading a fourth round pick in this coming draft and a seventh round pick in the draft after that for wide receiver Deshaun Vele. We make the trade with the Denver Broncos, and at first glance, it seems like it's pretty rich. A fourth round pick in this year's draft coming up to get a wide receiver that was just selected in the seventh round by the Broncos, a guy that's already 27 years old. He's a Latter-day Saint and went on a mission, played, I think, with Utah. So big guy, though, 6'5", 210 pounds. He looked really good as a rookie last year. And Sean Payton, he may have trouble identifying certain positions, but he always seemed to identify wide receivers. Denver's got a pretty deep wide receiving core with Sutton. They just drafted Pat Bryant. And I think the only way he was going to get rid of Vele was to get a really good pick. I think we went in there wanting to get Vele with a sixth rounder and a seventh rounder, and then other teams got involved. That sixth rounder got bumped up to a fifth rounder, and then the Saints decided, let's go ahead and give him our fourth round pick next year. We may get a fourth round compensation pick for Paulson and Debo going to the Giants. And if that were to happen, we'll have a bottom of the barrel fourth rounder. So we went ahead and traded our fourth rounder that we already have, which will be a much better pick because we're probably not going to end up very good this year. To go ahead and get that big bodied wide receiver, we wanted a big bodied wide receiver in this past draft. It didn't line up the way the Saints wanted it to, which is what they said after the draft was over. They were looking for a wide receiver. It just didn't happen. And when Detroit moved ahead of the Saints to get Isaac Tesla in the third round, I think that was the last real shot I think the Saints would have spent that third rounder on Isaac Tesla. Well, now they've decided to spend a fourth rounder in next year's draft on a big bodied wide receiver, and we're going to get him in Vele, despite the fact that he's a couple of years older than your normal, 1 year pro. Other than that, he looks like a pretty good player. Big body that can run the slant really well. He's a chain mover. He's pretty consistent with his hands. He's got really good speed for his size. So we just drafted a wide receiver, fellas. I mean, that's the way it's going to go. We just drafted a wide receiver in the fourth round, except we got him a year early. Well, let's see if he contributes. I think he had 40 catches his rookie year for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I think that a player with size is what we were missing. And I was going to keep Cedric Wilson on this team because I wanted at least one person with size. Cedric Wilson's a good run blocker. I hear Vele's not a bad run blocker for his size either. He's pretty good. So maybe this pick's going to work out all right. If we can get that kind of production from him, 40 catches, 400 yards, it's definitely worth, and, 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think it's worth a fourth round pick. Remember, we drafted Traquan Smith with a third round pick. I would say if you get Traquan Smith production out of Vele, then it's worth a fourth round pick. Third round pick seemed pretty rich for Traquan. Okay. But actually, as bad as most people think Traquan was, he did serve a role and he did have some moments. It just wasn't worth a third round pick. Fourth round pick? Well, I'm hoping for a little more from Vele than Traquan Smith, but I put these things in perspective just to say that a fourth round pick for a big bodied wide receiver is not a bad play for this team in the position we are with the roster we have. So I'm okay with that. Let's take a look at the complete roster now, 2 days before the preseason finale against the Broncos, and see what we're working with. Here's the offense. And there's the change. Deshaun Vele, a player with size. He's 6'5", so he's bigger than everybody else on the team. I think trading a fourth round pick means you're definitely keeping Vele on the roster, which is not good news for Cedric Wilson or Kevin Austin or Donovan Peoples-Jones. They are the wide receivers with size. You're keeping Olave, Shaheed, and Cooks. And Tipton looks like a guy you don't want to let go. Dante Pettis could be number 5 if you value the special teams ability. And Pettis isn't small. But you got to put Vele on this team now. So I would say goodbye to Daniels and Dixon and Peoples-Jones and Austin Jr. and even Cedric Wilson. I think now your wide receivers are going to end up Olave, Shaheed, Cooks, Tipton, and Vele, and that's 5. And if we keep 6, will likely be Dante Pettis. Other than that, nothing has really changed except there was a trade immediately following the Jacksonville game where we traded defensive tackle Colin Saunders to the Jaguars for center Luke Fortner. And on the depth chart the Saints present, which is not official, they have Fortner as the immediate backup center to Eric McCoy now. It's very strange to me. Shane Lemieux has center ability, but we haven't seen him play center in preseason. Kyle Hergel has been playing some center. But in preseason, we've mostly seen Torricelli Simpkins play center. And although Simpkins is struggling with blitz pickups and, this new position that he really just started playing right before preseason started at training camp, he just started highlighting at center. I guess you've seen enough from Simpkins to feel like he can do it. But it's weird. It's weird to me. Why do you have Shane Lemieux on your team, forcing him to play right guard when he started games in the NFL at center for years. So it's weird. I don't feel like Luke Fortner is better than Shane Lemieux at center. I just don't feel that way. And if you listen to the people in Jacksonville surrounding that team, it seems like they didn't really like Fortner anyway. The fans were happy he was gone. Maybe the Jacksonville got the best out of this trade. It definitely signifies we weren't going to keep Colin Saunders. We'll talk about that when we look at the defense. But yeah, Luke Fortner makes this team ahead of Shane Lemieux now. Got to. I'm assuming we're going to see Fortner in the last preseason game playing center. We've been seeing Panasiuk since we got him. We saw him for a few plays last week. I'm assuming we're going to see him this week, but oh man, neither one of those guys excite me. Shane Lemieux doesn't excite me, but I feel more confident about Shane Lemieux than I do Panasiuk or Fortner. So I'm worried about center. Another thing I want to focus on the offense is running back. Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller are locks. People say we have to keep Velus Jones Jr. He's too talented of a guy. Well, remember, we signed him off the street. Nobody else wanted him before. So when you waive somebody or cut somebody to get down to 53 players, certain players are waived and teams can grab them before they clear waivers. And I think certain veterans aren't subject to that. I'm not sure 100% how it would work, but but and I should have looked into it before talking about it. But I'm going to talk about it because I we're talking about the 53-man roster, which has to happen next week. I will do a video after this game on Saturday predicting the 53-man roster. But if we release a veteran like Clyde Edwards-Helaire to cut down to 53. I don't think anybody can just claim him because he's a veteran of so many years. I'm pretty sure. So we'll use him as an example. We can cut him, and he has a choice to go wherever he wants. He can't just get claimed. And if we cut him and tell him, hey, stay around, we're going to put you on the practice squad, and we're going to call you up multiple times, then that way you can keep a young player on your team and don't subject him to waivers, but you can still keep the players you want. You can get called up from the practice squad like 4 times in a year now, something like that. So the practice squad is going to be filled with players who get playing time in the regular season. So I think you have to look at that when you're trying to figure out your 53-man roster. You might want Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the team. His presence is more valuable in certain aspects than a guy like Velus Jones Jr. But Velus Jones Jr. might get claimed off of waivers. And Velus Jones Jr. has some ability that you want on your team as well. So it's kind of like a strategy. You cut Clyde Edwards-Helaire and keep Velus Jones. You keep Devin Neal so he doesn't get claimed. And then you put Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the practice squad and call him up if you need him. Those are the kind of things I'm looking at when I'm predicting the 53-man roster. Other players are going to waive players that we can claim, so the first 53 is never the final 53. I think offensive tackle is a position we're going to focus in on when it comes to those cuts by other teams. I think that's where we're lacking in depth here on the offense. Now that we've got Vele at wide receiver, I think offensive line and tight end are the two positions on the offense to look at when it comes to claiming players. At tight end, we'll see Juwan Johnson. That guy gets injured a lot, so I expect Johnson to miss time. And if he does, right now, it's Jack Stoll and Trayton Welch, Michael Jacobson, 7th-round pick, Monteval, who hasn't done a single thing in preseason, and Seth Green, who has great hands, but I think he only has one catch through 2 preseason games, or 1 preseason game. So Yeah, tight end's a rough spot. As long as Morrow and Hill are out, I think that's a position we're going to focus in on. Maybe spend some money in free agency if there's somebody else out there we trust, or primary position to look at through waivers when everyone cuts down to 53. Offensive line, especially tackle and tight end. All right, that's the offense. Big changes with Vele and Fortner at center. Man, do we keep Fortner on this roster and not Shane Lemieux? Man, that says a lot. Says a lot about what they think of Shane Lemieux at center because we haven't seen him at center in preseason at all. Fortner was a guy that Jacksonville was willing to let go, that people have a negative opinion on. Could he be good enough to keep on this 53-man roster right out of the gate, especially when you have Simpkins? All right, let's take a look at the defense and see what we're working with. There's our defense. I'm still not sold on the defensive line. Davin Godchall is a great player, apparently, and hopefully we'll see him for a little while in this last preseason game. And Christian Boyd is the number one nose tackle after him right now. Jonathan Ridgway's hurt, and there's talk of putting him on IR. And then you have Peavy behind him. But you can also consider Vernon Broughton as a backup nose tackle as well. So you keep Godshaw and Boyd, and think that's as deep as you go on the active roster. You keep a guy like Vernon Broughton who can highlight at end or nose tackle, and then you've got yourself some depth. And then put another guy on the practice squad, whether it's Ridgway or Peavy. And if there's injuries, you can call that guy up. I think that's how it's going to work. Personally, I think a big nose tackle is something that you need to make this defense work. And if Gottschall gets hurt, I don't think Boyd, being a 6th-round draft pick, is a guy you want starting for you at that position the entire season. Sure, he's looked good from time to time, but yeah, he would have to have a phenomenal leap in output to feel really confident about Boyd being your starting nose tackle. So, yeah, I think nose tackle is something we might focus in on next year in the draft. Gottschall is no spring chicken. The rest of the defensive line, Brian Racine, Nathan Shepard, Vernon Broughton, Jonathan Bullard should be the four that make it on the roster. You keep those four plus Gottschall and Boyd in the middle. You got 6 defensive linemen. Some people say that's a lot to keep in a 3-4. I think it's fine. I think you're cutting yourself short if you don't have at least some versatility there. So Broughton's versatile. Shepard and Brissy have played defensive tackle in their lives. I don't think they're going to be good nose tackles, but we run a different multiple front. And that's your defensive line. When people talk about how good the defensive line is, they always include the edge rushers, and I consider them, linebacker types. So Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cameron Jordan, Chris Rump, Fadil Diggs, Jasheen Davis. Those are the standouts right now at edge rusher. And it'll be really nice to see how this defense operates when we have all of our starters. Our running defense looks awful right now. We haven't seen Davin Gottschall out there yet. We're not getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. We haven't seen Case Young and Carl Granderson out there chasing after the quarterback for an entire game. So I have some optimism that our front line and edge rushers combined can stop the run and rush the passer, but I haven't seen it yet. So there's some optimism, but there's some pessimism too because we have not stopped the run in preseason without Gottschall out there. Middle linebacker looks great. Stutzman, Ford, and Stallbird are the studs right now. We haven't seen Davis and Werner play. We should see that in the preseason, hopefully. Like I said, teams do it differently, and I don't know what the Saints are going to do, but it'd be nice to see Demario Davis and Pete Werner out there in this defense, in this new system, for at least a couple of drives. But we're happy with Stutzman. We're happy with Ford and Stallbird. Sewell and Jackson are good special teamers, like I always say, and I like what they can bring as linebackers. But I think the end is near for DeMarco Jackson. Nephi Sewell, in my opinion, is still part of the mix. And 2 weeks ago, I would have told you Stutzman and Sewell are your primary backups. But now I'm thinking Stutzman, Ford, and Stallbird are players you don't want to get rid of. Nephi Sewell, I don't know if he could get claimed off waivers or if we could cut him and sign him to the practice squad. It sounds like a plan. I trust Sewell out there. I really do. Jackson's graded pretty low according to PFF through his linebacker play in preseason this year. So, man, it's that's a tough one. 2 weeks ago, Davis, Werner, Stutz, and Sewell are your guys. Now I'm saying Davis, Werner, Stutzman, Ford, and Stallbird. Let's see what the Saints do. I'm going to make that 53-man projection after the preseason game. We'll see what the Saints want to do. And then in the DB room to finish the video out, Alante Taylor still dealing with the groin injury. Really don't know what this defense is going to look like until Taylor's out there because he's supposed to be a difference maker at the nickel. And there's a big drop off between Taylor and then Isaac Yadam and Terrell Burgess, who would be the next up at nickel. I like Ugo Amadi, but he's not a superior player. He's a good plug and play guy every now and then, but you don't want to play and start Amadi for several games, play him for several games as a starter. I don't want to do that. But yeah, Amadi's good, but he's no Taylor. And then Isaac Yadam and Kool-Aid McKinstry with Quincy Riley, good cornerbacks. I like our cornerback room. I think Rajon Wright and Rico Payton have some skill. I think Wright is standing out this year. Payton was a standout last year in the offseason. Wright is the guy making the moves this year. I think Wright might make the team. Jaden Price has looked really good, and Dallas Beanham has gotten better and better and better. So I really love our cornerbacks. And in the safety room, of course, Justin Reed, Julian Blackman. We haven't seen both of them out there. That's going to be nice. If the starters do play and we get a couple of drives with Reed and Blackman, that'll be exciting. I'm still satisfied with the safeties. When Howden and Jonas Sanker are out there, we're looking pretty good. And of course, Ugo Amadi and Burgess have that ability as well to play nickel or safety. JT Gray's coming back from injury, so we're going to see him in the preseason game, possibly. But I'm not sure JT Gray makes this team. He's such a good special teams player, but he is an older player. And we've seen a lot of stuff on the special teams from younger players. So that's something to look for. Davison's doing good. Yeah, that is your defense. Okay, so Zach Woods dealing with a hamstring injury at long snapper right now. So whoever's going to be long snapping in this game is going to be our backup. Ooh, I hope that goes okay, especially if we're attempting field goals. Blake Grupe's looking great. Charlie Smith has been making every kick in the preseason. He's missed about half of his kicks in the offseason. And everyone says Groupie's got this job, no doubt about it, because Charlie Smith is so inconsistent. But it is funny how he hadn't missed a kick in the preseason yet. I think he nailed a 58-yarder in the practice in the dome this week to win the game in their call it session to win the game. Charlie Smith's been heating up. So, yeah, we keep him at because he's a roster exempt guy. So, Groupie's still our starter. I love Groupie. And then punter's still up in the air. It's Burnip and Kroger. Kroger's got the lead right now. Guy we just signed a couple of weeks ago. So, Kroger's your guy. Another thing I want to highlight before I go, Devin Neal is also back from injury and he's practicing this week. We have not seen the 6th-round draft pick running back out of Kansas all preseason. And I think Devin Neal should get a lot of play in this third preseason game. And I'm excited about it. Neal is always he was a guy that I always circled. I drafted him so many times in mock drafts. He was always there in the fifth round, sixth round. Sometimes I would get him in the fourth round. He's a good player. And I think even though we haven't seen him all preseason and the running back room is interesting and full of interesting choices, uh, I think you have to keep Neal on the roster. I think he was so good coming out of college that there's no way we could waive him. Somebody will grab him. So, okay, so that's it. That's my roster breakdown 2 days before the final preseason game for the Saints against the Broncos. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 so you can have more videos about the Saints, and I'll be giving you a 53-man roster projection after the final game of the preseason. I'll be talking about that final game of the preseason. And if there's a quarterback decision made, we'll be talking about that too. Until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who